Previously on agentpalmer.com, almost a decade later, David Mitchell's Thinking About It Only Makes It Worse remains relevant. The fourth major Star Trek movie really does feel like a voyage home, and have I brought long-form conversation back? Well, we're well on our way. This is the Palmer Files, episode 105, featuring Will White, whom you may know as WillBits, an animator both in large studio houses and for his own creations on YouTube. We discuss how Will became an animator, creating videos and animations on YouTube, appeasing the algorithm, supporting independent creations, throwing away good stuff, and does everybody really have a story in them? And much, much more. Are you ready? Let's do the show! Hello and welcome to the Palmer Files. I'm your host, Jason Stershik, also known as Agent Palmer, and on this 105th episode is Will White, an animator, artist, writer, video creator who not only has experience in the studio system for animation, but also has had his hand in YouTube as well with his channel WillBits. I first discovered Will on that channel, youtube.com/WillBits, and I've followed him so much as he's been willing to share on his socials. But finally, we met, and this conversation about animation and creation and YouTube was thoroughly fun. And well, as I'm sure there's more coming from Will in the future, you'll now be able to say you knew him when. His YouTube channel, WillBits, that's WillBits, is full of his original animations, as well as some gameplay tutorials, and I'm sure more original content will end up there soon. During the conversation you are about to hear, we cover his animation passion origins, discuss a pre-Flash program and some old Webtoons, which dates both Will and I to a certain age, and talk about Will's YouTube journey and an adventure at VidCon. Plus, throwing away a perfectly great drawing, an exploitative entertainment system, being fans not fanatics, and perhaps we will discover that everyone has a story inside them. All of that, plus a whole lot more, is coming your way shortly. But first, remember that if you want to discuss this episode as you listen or afterwards, you can find all contact information for myself and Will in the show notes. There, you can find more information about Will's work and his YouTube channel, youtube.com/WillBits. That's WillBits. Don't forget, you can see all of my writings and rantings on agentpalmer.com, and of course, email can be sent to thepalmerfiles@gmail.com. So without further ado, let's get into it. Will, you are an animator, and I have on this show, I've talked to authors who read a book and went, I want to know how this happens. And I've talked to musicians who listen to music and were like, I want to know how to make this. But I've never talked to an animator who is actually a fan of the medium. I've actually never talked to an animator. So I'm curious, what was this is a very long form question, but what's the journey and where does it start? Did you watch a cartoon once and go, I want to do that?
The journey to become an animator, I'm sure, is different for everybody, and it almost always every animator always has there's a certain love of the medium that everybody has, and I'm sure everybody has their own story of where they start, and I think it starts out from childhood. Everybody watches a lot of cartoons.
Yeah,
you consume media, and seeing it today. I have a 7-year-old son who is now in that media consumption age. He is the kind of guy who is watching YouTube, watching TikTok, watching the new, and consumed by more media than ever.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, there wasn't as much. There was a lot less of it. And there was a lot of, if I wanted to be entertained, there was a lot of time being spent watching a VHS. And a lot of what you have as a kid is Disney tapes. And one of my first formative memories as a kid was watching Aladdin back in the 90s on the VHS, and having seen it, and a lot of people as kids will watch and they'll rewatch VHSs and that sort of stuff. But one of the first things that I found out you could do on an old VHS was that if you press the pause button and then you hit fast forward, it would take you through the VHS frame by frame. That was a rare treat in the 90s because there was not a lot of technology available to you as a kid. Now on a computer, it's no big deal. You just click through and you can press all kinds of buttons to go frame by frame and watch that kind of stuff. But I broke a tape of Aladdin watching the whole thing, one drawing at a time, just going through. And I mean, in particular, I would stop anytime like a cool transformation or something like that was happening, or a really particularly violent, funny slapstick moment, and kind of seeing how things go. And that sort of breakdown as a kid, when you start going it's like learning how to do a magic trick. When you watch a show and somebody shows you a really cool illusion, and deep down, even as a kid, you know, this isn't real, this is a trick, but you don't know how it's a trick. You don't know how they do it. And the first time you notice the wire, you see the smoke, you can tell where the mirror is, you start to think, I could do this. I could draw these. I could make this kind of stuff. And you kind of start messing with that sort of stuff. The technology wasn't really available at the time, but I spent a lot of time watching cartoons to the point where my dad thought I was wasting my time, and he actually eventually blocked. We lived in a rural area, and we were watching on satellite TV. We didn't have like a big thing, and you could actually block channels. And he blocked the Disney Channel, he blocked Nickelodeon, and was like, you're wasting too much time on all of these kinds of things. And who's laughing now, Dad? Yeah. because it's ended up being a career for that as a thing that we do for that sort of thing. So, but yeah, I started dabbling in programs from a very early age. I think the first proper animation I made, I was probably in the 6th grade, and I had put together a digital animation for a local science fair where they had a multimedia category. And I made just like a 3-minute cartoon using a program called Action 2.5, which does not exist anymore. But it was made by a little company called Macromedia.
Yes, the precursor to Flash.
It was Action 2.5 became Flash 3.
Wow.
I was using Flash before there was Flash. So just to use the credentials for that as a thing, I've been in it for a while.
Wow.
From the ground floor.
I'm a fan of the medium. I don't know that I ever went frame by frame until a friend of mine got a laser disc.
Mm-hmm.
Because that, like, I didn't discover the ability to go frame by frame on a VCR, but when Laserdisc happened, and I remember specifically it was an anime. It wasn't even a cartoon. It was Akira, and we went frame by frame on that end transition, just kind of like there's so many moving pieces. Now, before that, right? I'm aware of animation cells because
sure.
My parents and my uncle and now me collect them. I have a couple of Ralph Bakshi cells from Wizards over my shoulder right now, and I have a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle cell and sketch behind me as well, and so I knew kind of how it's all put together. But I could never draw. So there was this barrier for me that it was like, and I think at that formative age, because I couldn't draw, the drive was like, I guess I'm not going to be an animator.
It's amazing how many animators don't.
Oh, okay.
And especially with CGI, 3D, more like computer drawn. I went to art school with a lot of people who were majoring in doing things in Maya, couldn't draw to save their lives as a thing.
I guess that's true, because we're about to find out how different our college experiences were on the internet, because my college experience was 2 very specific animated things. It was the Adult Swim that featured Aqua Teen and Brack and Space Ghost. And it was the internet featuring Homestar Runner. These are the 2 like college things. And when you talk about
that's the same era.
Okay,
much.
and when you talk about not being able to draw, I look at Homestar Runner as the forerunner to, say, South Park, where it's simple shapes animated to do things.
The Homestar Runner characters are deceptive. They're simple, but they got a style to them. But I get what you mean, and it's a very rigged show that's happening more and more, where you're seeing lots of shows that are what is today kind of a VTuber, where you see someone who you don't like, the person running a Twitch channel who has a VTuber or something like that. They can't draw. They hire somebody else to do that. They get someone to rig. They have an illustrator, and then somebody else rigs that illustration, and then they're just turning the camera on. Sometimes some of them are artists, and some of them like to make their own things, but a lot of them are just regular folks who just commission that stuff out for somebody else. And the actual animation, the stuff that I do in my job on a regular basis, I'd say 80-90% of it, not drawing. I'm fixing stuff. I'm editing stuff. Okay. I'm articulating things. The other 10%, I have to draw a lot. But they're in this particular field for that kind of thing. If I would run into problems really quick if I couldn't draw anything, because I specifically do a lot of retakes, which is fixing things. And sometimes that fixing things involves a lot of pencil mileage. But sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's just technical. Yeah,
I think this very well could be my age talking, but like I know this is not the case. I know this is not the case. I still think of like the hand-drawn, behind-the-scenes guys on slanted desks, moving paper to make sure that they're getting the emotion right as they're drawing like 4 or 5 frames at a time.
And I've done that before. It's really time-consuming. And, if you're doing things at a level that you want it to look like Disney theatrical stuff, there's really something to that, and being able to fully draw a character so they're moving all the time. It's expensive. It's really time consuming. I've talked to some, because I've done some commercial work before, and it was funny talking in the commercial industry how there was a while where working for like a TV campaign, they would sometimes try to hire people on from Disney specifically who had been trained to do that as a thing, and they hate them because they're slow. It would take them forever. It would take them like 3 days to do a shot, and they don't have time for that. Even though that's how you get the really, really high quality stuff, sometimes they want the really, really fast turnaround where they want to be able to see something immediately. And when you're used to working digital, you kind of figure out how to take a bunch of shortcuts that oftentimes don't look as nice in the long form, but I can produce them in a fraction of the time. So they always have time to refine it later. But it's funny how the industry has accelerated over time. Yeah,
and I still get comforted seeing the imperfect. Like I don't know. There's something about the imperfect nature of that early Disney stuff.
Yeah.
And just the early stuff, the Jetsons, the Hanna-Barbera, the Looney Tunes stuff, like all of it, because it's what I grew up with, and there were no truly crisp lines. Like everything is so fluid, but I also know it's because it took years, months, weeks to do that one little thing.
Yeah, retakes as a thing are in their modern incarnation are really, really recent as a thing that started happening. And for better or for worse, depending on who you ask. But back in the day, if you were watching back the tape and you realized, it's Scooby-Doo, and for this one sequence, Shaggy's pants change color. They're the wrong color pants. You can't just be like, hey, can we swap the color on those pants? You would have to. They're painted on cells. It's paint. You'd either have to scrape it off and like repaint the whole thing, or barring that, more likely you would have to actually completely redraw the entire sequence from scratch in order to get Shaggy with the correct color pants. So what happens? He's going on TV with the wrong pants. It's not that they don't know. They noticed, but it's like, how much does it cost to fix the pants versus how much is anybody going to care? Leave it. And so you get a lot more of that. That still happens. People still miss stuff, but nowadays it's a lot easier to catch and fix a mistake, especially something like, hey, Shaggy's got the wrong color pants. Now it's digital. We go in with the paint bucket tool and just plop, plop, plop.
And and this is because this is always the collector in me. And look, I don't have a ton of cells, but like the collector in me always hears about like, oh, we used to wash the cells because the acetate's expensive, so we're just going to reuse it. And I just keep thinking like, oh, like that's because that's still art.
There's a whole era that's gone, and sometimes you find things that are fake. Yeah. That are from an era where they were scrubbed, but because they're such collector's items, you'll get somebody who they'll have counterfeit cells that pretend to be from Disney's really bad about that. They'll do a limited run of like, oh, it's 500 cells from your favorite show, but they're new. They made them. They may be limited, but they're not from the film.
But I also think that you today, not you, but like the industry as a whole has the benefit of editing whenever they choose a new platform. Right, like you have the ability to put out a motion picture, an animated feature into the theaters, and then edit any mistakes before it goes to streaming. Or
you can push it. There's a process, so it's not instantaneous, and it has to go through a bunch of checks and a bunch of other stuff. But theoretically, you could just overwrite it anytime you want. And infamously, Spider-Verse came out not that long ago, and that was more of an audio problem. A lot of people complained about how the audio wasn't mixed well.
Yeah.
And they put out a new version that was mixed better as a thing. Back in the day, tough luck. That's what you got.
Was this always the plan? I mean, we skipped over quite a bit, but like from the 6th grade animation that you do in pre-Flash, I want to call it pre-Flash because it sounds cooler, but like in pre-Flash, like to now, was it always like, okay, one track mind, I'm on the train tracks to be an animator, let's do this?
I got discouraged really heavily. Really, really heavily. Because if you talk to me in middle school, 100%, this is what we're doing. This is the game. That's what we're doing for that as a thing. And I wish I could talk to that little boy. But I grew up in a small town where there weren't exactly animation studios around every corner. There was a lot of like, okay, but how do you make money doing that? And there wasn't like, it was basically pretty quickly, no, that's not a viable career path. You need to go into something else.
Okay.
And I spent probably my entirety of high school and a little bit of beginning of college just trying to find other things. And I spent a lot of time doing music. I spent a lot of time doing math and language arts. And I went into computer science and just wearing a lot of different hats in a lot of different ways. And it wasn't until college that I first started discovering both some of the webtoons, some of the specific ones that you mentioned, and also web comics as a thing. And I started getting into those, and I tried to dabble in, I just kind of rediscovered drawing. And I wasn't even that good at it because I was definitely like, I wasn't used to the digital way of doing, I could draw okay, but I didn't know how to scan a comic. I didn't know how to use Photoshop. I kind of started making it up as I went. And I just started immediately posting webcomics up online and trying to talk to people and interacting with people there and getting into those communities. And ultimately, I didn't have a ton of success there, and a lot of it was because my art was bad. It wasn't very good, which was a big hindrance in trying to publish those sorts of things. And one day I dabbled in, I rediscovered Flash, having been away from it for a while, and I dabbled in making a motion comic as a thing. And I basically stayed up all night doing just a regular comic, except that when you touched it, it would like move and do a basic thing. And that was also, it was at about the same drawing level as all the other stuff, but the fact that I had like a button you click on and then it would do a thing and then it would move, it got like 10, 20 times the engagement of any comic that I'd ever done. People were just like, wow, it moves. And at the time, this was like early 2000s. It was if you were on Newgrounds in like 2003, it was a lot of low-hanging fruit. A lot of it, like every now and then something really incredible comes out, but most of the time there'd be a lot of really just awful things on there. So you didn't have to be very good to kind of stand out from the crowd in that field. And that was kind of the first taste of like, oh, I'm doing a thing and putting it out on the internet and people are responding to that as a thing. That was when it was over. That was the point that it was like, okay, this is the path. This is where those things are going.
I have to ask, the original static webcomic.
Mm-hmm.
How was the writing? Like, how
Bad.
would you judge?
It's bad.
Okay.
It was real bad. It's one of those. It still exists if you know where to find it, but I've kind of intentionally squirreled it away because I'm not proud of it. It's not bad. It's not offensive. It offends me artistically as integrity. It's just, and it's a bunch of corny jokes and the characters are fine, but it's not like it's not the Great American Novel.
Well, I mean, I ask it because I know that your animation style, not just because you've been a professional, but that's evolved. And so your writing has evolved. And look, I've got journals that I'm in. Why do I keep them? No idea. But they're a part of me. And so the bad writing is just as much a part of me as the good writing is. And so like we grow from that. But I was curious because I know, at a certain point, and I think maybe we're here in your journey, but at a certain point you go, well, if nobody's going to pay me to do this, I should do it for myself.
Yeah. Well, that's at the at time of recording, we are in the middle of a quite a big strike.
Yes.
But perhaps more relevant, even if the strike ends the day after we record this, which hey, hope it does, but it may still be ongoing by the time this goes out as a thing. There has been a grander trend going into indie animation for that as a thing, where I've seen a groundswell of people wanting to go to there, and it's a really hard path. So it's not just because it's really expensive to make animation, either in time spent or paying other people to spend that time. It takes a lot to get anything off the ground of any amount of substance.
This is a conversation podcast.
Yeah.
And I spend money on a host, and then I spend my time in the recording and the editing and all the other stuff, right? So we're not even talking about me doing video and editing video or shooting or reshoots, and we're not talking about animation where you have to write out a script and all that stuff, which would be the same for a video. But this isn't the entry is low, but to do it well is not easy. And I think that's across the board. And I only have so much time as a consumer, right? I think everybody is in that kind of boat. But if I see while I'm scrolling through Twitch, someone who's literally animating in any capacity, I will give them a follow just to boost their numbers. I may never have the time to watch that person, but anybody who's still doing it, like my heart goes out to them. Just like independent authors who spend the time to write and put their own book out. Like my heart goes out to you. Like maybe one day I will be you, but for now I'm happy with my blog and my podcast, and that's fine. But when I see you, I feel you. I'm not you, but I feel you, and I understand. This isn't easy either. So what you're doing, which seems immensely harder, I want to support you even in that little way of just like, now you have an extra follower. But you're right.
Sure.
Like this, I also wonder too, how do you get eyeballs when you're compared to everybody else on YouTube?
That's a good question.
Nobody has the answer, by the way.
That I don't have the answer to. And it's one of the biggest questions for that as a thing. And the problem is that even if I had a really good answer right now, they're so case specific. It's one of those. I went to before the pandemic, I went to VidCon one year, the YouTube convention, and it was a really interesting experience for me that I don't think I would repeat currently. Not that I would never go back. I'm not the right person for it. And it's one of those where if you're a really huge creator, it seems like a really great convention. And if you're a fan, that seems like a really good convention. But if you're in the middle, there was a ton of the mid-tier YouTubers where if you have 1,000 to 10,000 subscribers, that kind of range where you're doing okay, but you're not you blowing the doors off yet. And there was a ton of those people there, and I don't think it's a really awkward kind of sophomore slump that hits a lot of people. And every single panel that I sat in on, people would ask a YouTuber, hey, what was your journey? Hey, how did you get here? Hey, how did you do this thing? And half the time they didn't know. They got lucky. Something hit. The right thing hit at the right time. And they were just like, well, I just make content that I'm passionate about and the world beat a path to my door, which is probably true. But there's always a lot of unseen factors that we can't account for, because just making something you love, just making something good is obviously, yeah, you want to do that. Of course you want to make the best thing you possibly can. But there are a ton of just immensely talented people making the best things that they can, just languishing in the corners of the internet because the right person didn't see it. The search engine optimization just didn't hit it, there's all kinds of factors that you can't control that don't hit that sort of thing. That's really easy to discount for. Like, it's easy to be like, well, I'm just good and I made it, but it's never that simple.
It's one of the reasons that when I find a new to me channel, regardless of how old it is, how many millions or tens of subscribers they have, I won't shut up about it to all of my friends, because I'm like, this is amazing. And it maybe it gets annoying because I have a little bit more time on my hands than a few of the people around me. But at the same time, I just discovered this, and I'm going to help you discover this. And it literally the least I can do. Like, because I want, like, everybody's a fan of somebody or something, and you want to do something to support them. And yes, the line that you get when you watch these people, whether it's on YouTube or Twitch, is you don't have to subscribe and you don't have to like or share. All you have to do is watch. And that's fine for a certain populace of people. But everybody else wants you to share, like, and subscribe and comment and do all of the things because they're still waiting for their break.
They call it the call to action, and it's a meme at this point where every morsel of content that you watch on the internet inanely repeats like, comment, subscribe, make sure to interact, please engage,
hit the bell, hit the bell.
It's the bell now. It's been the bell for a while. I haven't even, that's how long I've kind of been out of that particular scene for things. But it's unfortunately really true that everyone's just dying to try and appease this unfeeling algorithm that has been made and tweaked and changed. And then even sometimes you think you've got it. Sometimes a channel is like, I have appeased the algorithm, and now I have made it. I am on my way. And then a month later, some line of code gets tweaked somewhere, and everything just vanishes. Suddenly, you don't have the algorithm, and they don't tell you what it was. There's no patch notes that's sort of like, hey, we're favoring short content now. What are you doing making 10-minute videos, you dummy? That they don't tell you. You find out later, like after your empire has crumbled and you have nothing but ash in your mouth. It's like, oh, I was making 10-minute video and you wanted 30 seconds? That would have been good to know. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, well, I do have a specific question, though, because you have a YouTube channel.
Yes.
And you did have a day job in animation, and did they overlap?
Yes, a lot.
And
there was
did you need the personal outlet? Because obviously when you're working for a company, you might be personally invested, like if you're lucky enough to get to like love Looney Tunes and work on Looney Tunes or something like that. But
sure,
if not, it's a day job and you're an animator, so you'll animate. But like, did you need the YouTube outlet for like, here's my Will stuff?
I think that there's I think to a certain, well, I can't speak for everybody because some people do just love the thing that they're on. Some people just really want to get on a program and they just are like, no, this is it. I'm on yada da 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 da, and this is my favorite thing ever, and that's what I want. But I think that even people who say that are not being 100% with it, because deep down, everybody, I think, especially if you're an artist, I think a lot of people who aren't even artists, everybody's got a story inside them. Everybody's got something they want to tell. They've got some little project. They've got some little thing that they think they could bring to the world. And people, even if everybody who watches a movie, they go, I do it like this. nah, what if they did it this way? It'd be better for that as a thing. Whether you're right, whether you're wrong, it doesn't matter. But everybody has those opinions where they're like, they should have done it this way. They should have done it that way. And when you get used to doing that kind of stuff, everybody starts coming up with their ideas for their concepts for the how would I make Spider-Man be different? It's more, no, forget Spider-Man. Forget Scooby-Doo. Forget every other show. I want to make my show. I want to be my thing. I want to do my story. I want to be my project. And that's always the game that I feel like every animator specifically deep down is like everybody's working for the weekend and just going, but I want to make the real thing for that. And I think that every single animator has something in their pocket ready to go if you ever gave them the chance. I joke that if you walk into any studio and if I blindfolded myself and wadded up a hunk of paper and just spun around and threw it at somebody and said, you got a show now. Whoever that paper hit, you got the show. They'd be like, oh, well, here's my pitch. They're like the joke about like the waiter in LA that has a screenplay. Every animator's got like a pitch Bible. They're like, no, and maybe like an animated test of their thing for it, ready to go. And what's more, I think you got a 50% ratio of it'd be pretty good. It might be really good by the time it got through the process of like other people helping them design and have like a writer's table. And because lots of things are rough on the concept stage, but like a lot of them would get surprisingly good with just a little bit of refinement. I think that just as a peer group, there's a lot of really, really talented people who are just never going to get the chance because there's only so much time, there's only so much money, there's a finite resource. So at some point you kind of have to pick a lane and go, well, this is close enough. It's a living. I will at least get to do this and have my dream and get to build out that stuff, get to animate those things. But deep down, you want to give it a shot and be like, I would like to make a show and be a showrunner and get do what's the animation version of the American dream. I will pull myself up by my bootstraps. I will individually create a feature film or a pilot or whatever it is and make it happen. And for me, I think a lot of the like, oh, well, I have a day job. There was a lot of, especially when you hit the reality of not everything in the animation industry is sunshine and roses. A lot of it is, it was a animation professor who would joke that would say, hey, animation, it may be difficult, but at least it's tedious. Where it's not easy. It's just and even when it is easy, it's boring and rigorous. And if you're drawing the same character 100 times and they're slightly different and they have to be slightly different in really specific ways where an individual drawing can be really good, and then if it doesn't match the other drawings, it's crap. You have to throw it away. You have to start all over. So there's a lot going on, and that's just the process. Never mind the bureaucracy and the payment struggles and the politics and the normal things that creep into any office collaborative environment, even in a best case scenario. And you start going, how do I go outside the system? You start thinking, how do I develop something else? And in our modern era, unfortunately, a lot of the pitches that go into things, and here's the really frustrating thing, is because I have worked with a manager, I have my own pitch Bibles, I've done my own pitching and stuff on the side that are sights unseen, and the pitch almost doesn't matter. Almost. It does matter. The idea does matter, but it doesn't matter as much as it should, because at the end of the day, who you are and who knows you is way more important than if your story is any good. Because at the end of the day, everybody's kind of slaves to that algorithm, and they'll go, oh, how many followers do you have? How many people on Twitter? How many people on YouTube? How many Instagram people? Are you on TikTok? What's going on for that as a thing? And the people with money who are making decisions everything's subjective. Art's especially subjective. And if I look at a pitch and I go, wow, I love that story, that's the best animation I've ever seen. And then you look at their social media and they're like, oh, tens? They have tens of followers. Well, it must not be very good. Yeah, well, that's not true. Of course, that's not true.
Well, yeah. And so I have a friend who is probably going to end up self-publishing a book, and I'm going to be editing that book, and I love him to death, but he has no social presence at all. And I was like, he has a website because I built it for him, but like, I keep telling him, dude, I know your stuff's good, but even an independent publisher is going to be like, what are you going to do to sell this book? And you aren't, you even if you went door to door to 100 million people, that would take too long. You don't have the digital following for somebody to pick that up. And, you know, maybe he happens to know somebody, and I'll be wrong, and I'll be happy to be wrong. But sadly, you're right across every industry now.
It's amazing how much it holds true across everything. So for that, and speaking to self-publishing books, that's what my wife does. She is a novelist who has been in indie pub, and that landscape has changed immensely, because back 5, 6, 8 years ago, you could a lot more easily put a book out onto the Amazon storefront, put it in Kindle Unlimited, put it in some of those other places. And if you gamed it right, if you followed the trends and you did the search engine optimization, and you did the algorithms, you could actually make a lot of money without a following, because they would find you within the store. And once you pushed up the rank, once you were up there, it'd be like being on the front page of YouTube, where suddenly you're getting thousands of views, millions of views, because you could kind of game the internal Amazon algorithm.
I watched,
but they change it.
I watched a documentary about this, that phenomenon, specifically about independent publishing, about romance novels. And I
ding, 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 ding.
It was fascinating, because they talked to women who were in various stages of that algorithm, people who were moving up the charts, people who were moving down the charts, people who were on the charts that are trying to get back. And it was just, I looked at it, because I'm not a romance reader, but I looked at it as just a straight metaphor for like everything else. There are, like, look at the YouTube landscape. People are going up, people are coming down, people are trying to get back to where they were. It's frustrating to be a creator, because we finally have the tools and the platforms to share everything, and now it's more crowded than we ever thought humanly possible.
I think romance novels are just the canary in the coal mine, because they just happen to be the most voracious consumer base that's out there. Nobody reads books like romance. Nobody. They will read book after book after book after book after book, and they will pick them up and they will just go through and they will churn through it really, really fast. And as a result, sometimes they hit those trends faster than other communities. So it's always what is the future of media going to be? Look at romance and see what they're doing. They were one of the first to go onto TikTok and start switching their advertising there, where as a joke of book talk, how many people would go and promote their stuff there really early on in the process. And it's just interesting to, like, even if you don't care about reading that sort of stuff, it's always interesting to check in and see what the community is doing, because the ones that are succeeding are going to be the pioneers who hit that on the cusp. And I think they do it a little faster than anybody else.
Yeah, I did want to go back, though, because I have to ask this question. You talked about having to throw away a perfect piece because it didn't work with what was before or after it. Mm-hmm. Is it, like, as an animator, do you have to have that quarterback pitcher mentality of, like, I threw an interception, I threw a home run pitch, now I have to just completely ignore it and move on? Like, is it that kind of, I mean, I know it's not like do or die, like maybe athletics, we tend to make athletics, but like all of them have to have that short memory. It's like, well, that didn't happen, or that didn't affect me, or like, what is it like when you have to throw that away, even if you liked it?
It's always a little emotional. And it's one of those things where I've seen a lot of, and it's specifically being in retakes, a lot of what you're doing is throwing away art and then redoing it. And then sometimes those retakes get retakes and they get retook. And there's nothing more devastating than being done with something and going, do it again. Even if it's the same amount of work, moving on to something new and finishing, like if I did 3 shots that are completely different and turn those in versus doing 1 shot 3 times is just exponentially emotionally more difficult to go back and do it again, because there's just something about you start to feel the drudgery of like, oh no, what if this one doesn't get taken again? You're Sisyphus rolling the boulder up the hill, where it is just like, I'm not accomplishing anything. I'm doing it again, and I might do it again. And what's worse is that there are some productions who will do what they call paying you by the foot, where instead of paying you by the hour, it's referring to a film reel, where like a foot of film reel is like 12 frames or whatever. And then so if you get a foot in the can, you get paid. But if you turn in that foot and it needs notes, you have to go back and do that again.
So you still won't get paid even if you had to do 16 because you had to do 4 of them over again.
In a particularly exploitive genre, and I won't name any particular studios, but there are some that would wildly abuse that system, where they would basically build those retakes into the animator doing the first run, and they would keep sending them back over and over and over again until they get a shot that they like, which it's a system where if you have a bunch of easy shots where not a lot is going on, it can seem kind of nice because you get a really big payday. But if you've got like a huge crowd shot, or there's a lot of action, or there's a lot of effects, or there's something going on that is just for whatever reason they don't like it and you have to do it all over again, that gets beyond the emotional impact of like, well, it feels bad to do it again. But that's more of a, haha, my family is starving because I didn't get paid because I had to do the same day of work all over again. Ha 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 ha. And that's real bad. There's been a lot of pushback too. Like, and I know that on their end, they're trying to save money on the production because they don't want to pay for, in theory, if an animator is just not turning in good quality work, then they feel bad about not wanting to pay for work they can't use. And I get that, but that's where you have to hire people you trust and like build a relationship where you are trusting them to do the work and you're trusting that you'll get paid fairly for the work that you're doing. And that's always kind of a conversation in the animation industry, as you both sides kind of try not to get taken advantage of, but I think it's a little off balance in that scenario.
I mean, the entire entertainment industry seems to be a bit off balance, and that's, it's the strike is happening as we record, and it's hard to reconcile any piece of media because while we see the actors on screen, I am in my heart a writer. And in my heart, I've produced things and I've edited things, but I always want to be the writer. And so my heart goes out to them more than the actors or the producer. And I know producers and editors that are going to be affected by this. But again, if I was going to be anything, it would be a writer. I just get to make, my one of my dream jobs, because I think I need variety, but one of my dream jobs is a line from Armageddon when Bruce Willis's character is like, "You're NASA. You have guys just sitting around thinking shit up. I want to be that guy. I want to just sit around thinking shit up." That sounds amazing.
Everybody wants to be the idea guy.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to be the idea guy of that kind of a thing. And it is one of those where, on one hand, there can be good idea people. That is, a lot of CEOs are like, yeah, I'm the idea guy, and I implement that kind of stuff. Going back to referring to pitches, having a pitch is being an idea guy. And at the end of the day, a pitch or an idea are a dime a dozen. Because going into someone who is really good at animating, where I'm like, oh, everybody's got an idea in their pocket, and with the right resources, it could make a really, really good show. But the trick is,
I think the other part of the trick ends up being that the great idea doesn't equate to the money making idea, and I think right now we're in a weird stalemate between the two.
It is partially that a good idea doesn't necessarily create money. but also a good idea is only good when it's executed well.
Okay. Yeah, execution is
Execution
key.
matters.
Yeah.
You can take the best script in the world and hand it to an amateur, and you're not going to get anything good out of it. Conversely, I could take the worst script in the world, and if I have a good actor, a good director, good set design, a good cinematographer, you can make it look brilliant.
Yeah.
You can make it look really good. And if the script's bad enough, that might not matter. But you can fix a bad script. You can't write your way out of bad execution.
Yeah. Yeah. No, so
ideally you want everything, of course.
Well,
of course,
yeah, ideally you want everything. So I guess, are you at one point with the day job and the YouTube, you stopped the YouTube.
Yep.
Is there a return to it, or do you want, like, because
depends on how long the strike goes on.
but because from the outside, right, as just a straight consumer / reviewer of things, it always appears to me that, and look, I have no problem being wrong when I say this, but it always appears to me that, like, you would prefer to hold on to your pitch to put it on a studio than to do it yourself. At least it feels that way, because I always run into creatives that have ideas. Most of them aren't willing to put them on their YouTube channel because they want to not sell it, but you know what I mean? Like, they want to give it a better shot than a YouTube life. They want it to be on television or cable or whatever. Like,
there's definitely something to be about legacy media and being like, well, but if it was a feature film, well, but if it was on main TV as a thing, there's a certain validity that I think it's hard to completely write off.
Okay.
Where people always want to feel the like, yes, 1 billion views on YouTube is nice, but it's not on TV.
Yeah.
So who cares as a thing? And there's a certain elitism that I think we absolutely absorb because it goes in that direction. I was lucky enough this year to be in the TV Academy. I actually got to vote on the Emmy nominations this year, which is just novel. I've never gotten to do that before. This is the first year that I've done that as a thing. And there are all kinds of events and for your considerations and things that they do. But like, you're just very aware of the divide between live action and animation, where like they don't view that as valid no matter how many people are watching it, where you can have a animated film come out and make $1 billion and they're like, yeah, but it's Mario. Like, they don't really like take it seriously no matter what, because it's for kids, because it's animation no matter what you do. So yes, there is a certain amount of appeal to legacy media, but it is one of the reasons that I put a pin in YouTube as much as I did was I had the curse of some success in that my channel got really, really big when I had a couple of games I was playing that got really popular. Specifically, I was playing a Harry Potter game, and I went from probably like 5,000 subscribers to maybe like 16,000 over the course of a few months, because I tapped into a Harry Potter niche, which is huge. Those guys are voracious. And it was a really, really great time doing all this stuff I'm not a Potterhead. I was never huge on like Harry Potter specifically, but I liked it. As much as I enjoy any other fantasy franchise. And I was just like, yeah, sure, I'll jump into this. And I got more into it whenever I started getting positive reinforcement loop from people doing that. But it was never really my passion. I was never like, yeah, I'm going to be a Harry Potter channel for the rest of time, which they kind of want you to. They were like, you should play this Harry Potter game, and you should talk about the movies and the books, and you should do this. And it's like, that's not, any fandom is not really my scene. And I'm not even singling Harry Potter out there. I'm sure I could for reasons. It's irrelevant if it was Star Wars or Lord of the Rings or whatever. It doesn't matter. Fandom is just, I enjoy those things. I like being a fan of things, but I'm never going to be the kind of fan that is like, yeah, I want to be in the 501st and just like a stormtrooper, and that's my weekend because I live it and breathe it.
Yeah, there's a line, and I think I'm with you. We are fans, not fanatics.
There's a distinct line that at some point you cross and you go, no, this is my life.
Yeah.
I'm into alternate reality Undertale, and that's the only thing that I'm into. This particular one where the bad guys are good guys, and also they swap genders. And that's it. That's the only thing that I'm into. No, of course you want to be into a wide I like having a balanced diet and a wide variety for things. And so I was reached out to by a pretty large corporation. At the time it was a Popbase. They were building an app and doing this kind of thing, and they reached out to a bunch of different YouTube channels of varying sizes, and I was the smallest one that they reached out to. I was like just barely in their threshold of, okay, we'll talk to you as a thing, and they invited me onto their program. And I got to network with a bunch of much bigger YouTube channels in that process. And I got really ambitious really fast, where I was like, okay, this is it. This is kind of what I've been waiting for. Because part of my whole thought process behind YouTube was, of course, it's a hobby that I enjoy. It's just fun to do. But in the back of my mind, there's always the like, well, if I build a big audience, that gives me the power to then branch out as an artist and go, let me show bigger, cooler things. Let me make some cooler content. And now I have an audience to show it to, that the algorithm will be nicer to me, that I can get it before those eyeballs and see those things. Because at the end of the day, I think everybody's got that story in their pocket. And I was like, well, let's try it. So I spent, for a while, I had a day job. I was running my actual YouTube content, and I was trying to make animated shorts as it goes. And the most recent content, I think, is still several of those shorts.
Yes, because that was because I do some homework on this show. People may think I just sit and talk to people, but I watched some of those.
Yeah.
I think I watched some of them before, because I was subscribed to you for, well, before the Harry Potter stuff.
In the before 4 times.
Yeah. And I liked it, like, but it's also like, to me, like, that takes me back to like, there's a style choice that you made that reminds me of the animated Clerks series, and like that era of animation where I'm like, okay, like as long as he's telling jokes that I appreciate, I'm in for this.
I took a class with Steven Silver specifically on some of that stuff. So who was the character designer on Clerks, if for anyone not familiar. So it is one of those where, like, yeah, I could see, I probably do draw at least some inspiration from that kind of styling, whether I want to or not, just because you draw the things that you like to a certain extent. But yeah, that was one of those. That was at the time, I was like, let me make 5-minute shorts and let me just make whatever I can. And I plotted out a season. I wrote like 13 of them. I did pre-production on most of them, and I think I put out like 6 of them. I've got another half dozen in varying stages of completion. And it took me about a month to make one of those, with everything else that was going on as it went. And my plan was to pre-buffer a bunch and then finish the rest as I went and try for a weekly release. And ultimately, when they came out, the thing that I ran into really quickly was and I'm sure anybody who has done this kind of YouTube thing for a while would be screaming, no, you dummy, this was obviously going to happen, is that audiences don't always transfer well, no matter what it is. Even if it's like I was a Fortnite streamer and I wanted to switch over to Call of Duty, and those things are really similar, they don't cross over all the time. Your Fortnite streamers aren't going to go watch your Call of Duty necessarily. Yeah. Even if they think they like you, even if it's really, really similar content, they're never going to make that jump straight away. And that's understandable. That's just people come for the content. Even when they think, oh, I love you as a creator, they're never really there for that as much as they think they are. So what I found was there were these shorts that, like, they're rough. Like, I was doing limited animation. I was taking shortcuts where I could. The characters are really pose to pose, talky head, just because I was just trying to blaze and get things out as fast as I could to get things going. And like it took me a month to make it at the quality that it was. I would love to have made it prettier, but
this is also after work. This is not your day job. Like, you have a family. Like, there's other things.
I was staying up late trying to get things done and driving my family crazy trying to get anything set for that as it was. And so I'd spent all of this effort making all of these things, building out all this stuff, and I would put it out, and it would get like a couple of thousand views and a bunch of people coming in going like, hey, when's the next Harry Potter video? And it's like, and you don't want to be mad at that person because that's a well-intended person who's a fan of you, who loves your content, who's coming in and they want to say really, really nice things. Like, they're not coming in maliciously. They deeply love a thing that you've made and want to see more of it. But as a creator, it just kind of guts you to put that much effort into, like, I'm going to make the leap. I'm going to make the big new thing. I'm going to work really hard on it. And nobody cares. It's rough. Yeah. It's a rough time to have that as a thing. And it was definitely one of those things that, like, I took it really hard. And it definitely made me take a step back and kind of, like, is what I've been doing for the last couple of years was I just kind of retracted into traditional media. I've been working at Bento Box and working on The Great North as a thing, which I've been very blessed that I was managed to get that gig pretty quickly. But once I got in there, I was kind of like, I'm just going to do this and just kind of get the paycheck for a while as a thing and just like do the union gig as best as I can, which is now taking an interesting turn now that currently strikes are going on. But this is now which now pushes me in the other direction where now I'm like, oh, wait a minute, hold on. Maybe there is some merit to the independent things after all as it goes. The comfort has been disturbed. But yeah, it's been an interesting journey kind of going down that particular path of going between, well, how much do I want to work on making this stuff independent versus how much do I want to just kind of be the person who keeps my head down and goes, maybe if I just work on Scooby-Doo, that's fine. Maybe that is my dream job. Maybe I will pretend that is all I need.
The strike in Hollywood has continued since we recorded, and unfortunately, there's really no end in sight so far as I can tell. But I will say that the movement towards YouTube or other independent platforms is something that a lot of artists, whether it be animators, directors, writers, actors, producers, all of them, is something that is gaining a little momentum. Partly it's because the corporate entertainment system has flaws, but more often it appears that the artists want to control their vision. Do I want Will to keep his day job at a big animation studio so that he can continue to provide for his family? Of course I do. But I also hold the same hope that he can create his story with his vision through to its conclusion, whether it be sold to a distributor or released on his YouTube channel. I can want to hope that both of those things can hold true. And while it may seem like holding two opposing viewpoints, I can assure you that wanting artists to be gainfully employed while at the same time pursuing their own independent visions are not opposites, or at least they shouldn't be. Often, one can impact the other in curious and unexpected ways. The blog that was first agentpalmer.com evolved because I wanted to write better for my day job. And in order to write better, you have to write more. This then spawned the Agent Palmer brand as it is now, which now includes this podcast and will probably encompass video in some way shortly. But whether the day job is the inspiration to do better or just a way to pay the bills, I'm here for whatever Will and other creators like him create next. I want to support the independent creators because often that's where you'll discover the most original ideas. And as a person who regularly laments the formulas of big Hollywood, I'm all in on originality in every medium. So if there is an independent author, musician, director, or animator out there that you like, please share it with me. Thanks for listening to the Palmer Files episode 105. And now for the official business. The Palmer Files releases every 2 weeks on Tuesdays. If you're still listening, I encourage you to join the discussion. You can find all related ways to contact myself and my guest, Will White, in the show notes. There you can find links to his YouTube channel, WillBits. That's youtube.com/WILLBITS. The music for this episode was provided by Henno Heiter. Email can be sent to this show at thepalmerfiles@gmail.com. And remember, your home for all things Agent Palmer is agentpalmer.com. All right, Will, do you have one final question for me?
Of course. If I'm walking into the room blindfolded with my piece of paper, crumple, 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 throw it, bop, I hit you in the head. All the resources of a studio are at your disposal. You are now a creator. You have been given the power. You nepotism is here. You got a story in your pocket. You're ready to go. What would you do? What would you make for it? Well, you want to make a show right now? Let's make one. What would you do?
Panic. I immediately panic.
You got nothing?
No, well, this is the thing, right? So I talked about wanting to be the idea guy, but really I think I go phone a friend. I am very good at helping to polish, and I am part of that system that can help foster an idea into something more beautiful. Mm-hmm. I am not, of all the people I know, and maybe if it was you hit me with the paper and sit me in the room for long enough, I could come up with something. I bet we
could workshop it real quick.
But without that, I phone a friend and I go, all right, we can do whatever we want. Let's do something. And I've turned.
It's the blank paper problem.
It's not. Do you know what it is?
No?
It's just that I have become so I've been underemployed for a very long time, and I've used that time to help foster my friends' ideas. And I have found that is a place I love to be. Yes, I do this show, right? But this show is also a way to help foster your stuff. I'm getting you out there in some kind of a way. It's not just for me. Like this is a conversation show, so the guest gets something out of it. You get some press. You get some new people that may whatever. And I find myself enjoying the fostering of other people's things more than creating my own. Even when I'm writing my blog, like a lot of those ideas are I'm reviewing something somebody else created, or I'm writing about a situation that happened in my life, but not enough to turn it into Seinfeld because not that much happens in my life. Right. So I just
not much happened in Seinfeld.
Well, it's true. But like I think I phone a friend and I just go, all right, we can make the thing. Let's do it. And I know you now, so you can easily, like, if the first person doesn't pick up, like, well, I know Will, if has a billion ideas. So let's go. I want to be a part of it, but I think somehow over the course of helping friends, I helped a friend with an independent feature-length documentary. I've helped publish books. I've helped little mini-series here and there, and I think that's my pocket right now. I think I'm more of that producer in a way, editor guy, than just like, oh no, I've got my pitch. Like I'm the one. If we are waiters in Hollywood, you've got the script, and I'm like, let me help you.
There's something to be said for being the support class, for sure, about being able to, where a lot of the times you're not necessarily spearheading the idea, but you might be the person there for punch up. You might be the person there for editorializing. So often I will write, that's my wife. For me, I will write a script and it'll be, and she'll come along and go, and then pull out her samurai sword and just, and she'll cut off half of it and be like, you don't need this. Just start here. This isn't funny. Sorry. Jump to the thing that's actually good. And I have to like do the Charlie Brown walk and be like, she's right. It's always right. It's better now.
I can't tell you how long it took me to get to where your wife is as an editor, where for a long time as an editor for various things, because I was willing to read things, I would be like, you need to add this. And then you get to that point where like, wait, if we take out this whole paragraph, it's better. Like, and it takes a while to grow into addition by subtraction, because even if I love you, I still want you to have the best product. And sometimes that's about taking something away. And that's like, I'm there now where I can see both sides. So, and the thing that always, in that situation, the thing that always stuck with me is from driver's ed. Because when I was in driver's ed, the one teacher we had was like, there are a lot of ways to avoid an accident. You can slam on the brakes and you can turn the wheel. But you know what else you can do? You can also accelerate. It is an option. You do not always have to slam on the brakes. Sometimes you can accelerate through a thing. And I think about that in terms of like, sometimes it's subtraction and sometimes it's addition. Because some people are in that mindset of like, it's brake and turn, or it's add. And it's like, no, sometimes you can accelerate away from it or subtract something. And I think you have to like that's like life experience, I guess. I don't know. It's something, but I don't know, at a certain point, I think I've aged into it as well. So don't get me wrong. 10 years ago, 20 years ago, I probably have a lot of pitches.
Yeah. And you might, if you sat on it for a minute, you might be like, hey, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Hey, wait a minute. This whole thing, maybe we polish this up. But I understand the thought process.
But I think for now I've aged into I don't want to be Spider-Man, but I'm cool if I'm the man in the chair. Let's go with that. It's fine. I really like it. And I still take responsibility when I do that. I'm not like dodging responsibility, because I think that if you aren't responsible for the edits you're making or the shepherding of the project, then what are you even doing? But I've been talking on this show for at least a few months about dabbling in video. And I think the reason I've not is because it's mine. And I have to come up with that idea for that video. Because the idea of like just turning on the cameras for this podcast is not what I want to do. I write for the blog and I have these conversations on the podcast. If I'm going to jump into another form of media, it needs to be different. I'm not just going to read my blogs, which is why this podcast is not just me reading my blogs. Right? It needs to be something new. And I think, the idea of jumping into video, sure, it's a great idea, but you need content. You can't just be like, I turn on the camera and things happen. Like, that's not my life.
Well, a lot of it would be not just reading the blog, but reading the blog. And then if you're talking about a movie or a TV show or whatever else, that's where either you or an editor or somebody else is putting up relevant clips from that thing that you're talking about, illustrated, then you have graphics, you have all the other stuff, and now you're doing video essays, and like those can do great, but they are a lot of work.
Well, and that's why I mean, video essays is what I would want to do, but I think that it's a kind of writing that I think I can do. Like I think I'm my friend who edits my blog is like, of course you can do video essays. You can editorialize better than anyone else, and it's why I edit your stuff, because some of that stream of conscious, I know you for 20 years. It's why I can decipher it, right? But like, I want it to be different. And I have video essayists who I love that I watch, and I wish I could support them more. Like, there's only one of the sad truths about the whole entertainment industry is that there, as an individual consumer, there's literally only so much you can do. Like,
you're only awake so many hours a day, and if you've got one thing running, that's how much you can watch.
That's it. And even if you got two, are you really paying attention to either?
Yeah, at that point, you're just running things on just to game the system.
Yeah,
you're not really meaningfully consuming content.
Yeah, no, I will say this. I wish you all the best for when that paper hits you.
I'm working on it. But that's a different interview.